Hey guys, welcome back to Honkai Star Rail. In today's video, we're going to be going through the free-to-play tier list. Now, before we get into anything, I did just draw the winner for the previous giveaway, the $100 giveaway, and it turned out that the guy who won it had actually won before. So we're going to do another giveaway in this video so someone else can win the prize. So it's going to be a $100 giveaway. Just be subscribed, leave a comment saying anything you want in this video, and you'll go into the draw. We'll do it about a week away, and I'll announce it in a community post. But with this one, when I say free-to-play tier list, what I mean by this is all 4-star units and the Trailblazer, because you get them for free. I know that free-to-play can summon any 5-star unit, but I like separating the tier lists like this because I ramble a lot when I talk about characters, and I can see these being very long videos. So then we'll do like a full-on 5-star one, and then closer to launch, I'll get my full Google document with a bunch of extra information on all the characters set up, and we'll have that for like a good resource for you guys on my notes and stuff like that. But that is a work in progress. It has changed a lot since my original video during the closed beta with all the information that we found out and the theory crafting that we've done. So keep that in mind, but let's get into it. We're going to go through it in alphabetical order. The first one being Arlen. I'm going to chuck him in S tier. I think Arlen is absolutely fantastic. Originally, in my first tier list, I rated him really poorly, and that was because I just didn't have the knowledge that his skill did not cost skill points. Arlen is an absolute savage. The fact that he has no skill cost is amazing. If you watched one of my previous videos where I talk about skill points, it's a very important part of the game, and having a main damage dealer that can ignore that whole part of it and doesn't consume any, he pairs really well with things like Bronya and Ting, because Bronya especially has just so much more room to use skill points, because normally your main DPS is going to be prioritizing skill points every turn. When you look at something like Zila, she's going to be munching through so many skill points. It's not funny. This dude doesn't care. He's a bit tricky to play around because you got to keep him topped up and everything like that. But in general, just having decent damage along with a 0 skill cost makes him an amazing unit for free-to-play players especially, but also like I feel like he's going to find a lot of uses through at least the first 6 months to a year of gameplay, if not even further. So that is Arlen. Moving on from that, we have Asta or Asta. I don't know how I'm supposed to say it. I say it like pasta, but hey, I'm Australian, so I always say things funny. But she's going into the A tier. Just a really solid support all around. The great thing about Asta is that in early game, she's fantastic. She can be a great breaking unit. The thing with break in the early game, especially because it only scales off of the enemy defense and your break effect, you can just stack some break effect and then just keep her with some speed and some, tanky stats. And she can actually deal really good damage when she breaks with her multi-hit attack. Normally, Asta's a funny one in that I don't like bringing her as much to non-fire enemies, just because to really stack her buff, you really want fire enemies to be getting hit. But she can be played two ways. She can be played as a break unit, or you can use her as a basic spam, just to be a skill point generator and then get her speed buff when she does get her ultimate available. So she's very versatile in that play style, but I personally like most when I can use her against fire enemies, because like I said, her passive, which gives the attack buff, it's based on hitting enemies, and then if they're weak to fire, it stacks it even further. So I do like her against fire, but she can be used just about anywhere as well. Moving on from that, we're going with Danny Boy. Danny Boy's going into that A tier as well. Not as good as some of the other DPS like Arlen that we're going to look at. He doesn't have that real key thing that makes him just go up to that S tier. But I feel like Dan's like kind of like one of the best of the rest at DPS. He has a slow, he has wind res penetration, and resistance penetration is a huge thing, because I think at the moment, unless I'm missing something, Dan and Zila are the only two that really have it, and it's its own multiplier, so it's actually multiplies outside of the rest of the damage formula, which makes it incredibly powerful. The one thing with Dan is you do have to target him with an ability to, you have to use a skill to make it apply. Unfortunately, Trailblazer Fire's passive, giving him a shield, doesn't proc his passive to give him the wind res pen, but if it's like an AoE heal from Natasha or something like that, it does apply. So, March 7th shield in the early game, really nice to put on Dan to make him proc, and away he goes. And once you get him to 2 Eidolon, I believe it is, it doesn't have a cooldown anymore, so you can just keep getting it up. He can deal massive damage with that. He's got the speed slow. He has got the ability to increase his own speed as well. So he's just got a real good chunk of support and big damage in his kit. The other way I think he can be played, which I'm definitely going to test out, don't take this one, don't take my word for this one, but this is one that I need to do more testing on. I feel like he could be played as a 0 energy unit, meaning one turn you use his skill, the next turn you use his basic, so that he's like a secondary DPS on a team. Not too sure how it'll work out, but I just think it's an option that I really want to test out with him as well. But in general, just a great DPS unit for free to play. Moving on to Herta. Herta gets chucked straight into D tier. The problem with Kurokuro or time to twirl is that there just is no time to twirl in the game. There is no incentive for raw AoE like Herta brings. And like when you... There's just... The only thing, and I mentioned this, the same thing with Himiko, it's like, yes, okay, maybe if you're trying to clear every mob in the overworld every day, maybe there's a purpose for that, but like... The use case of that is so low. Like if they make that like optimal to do for everyone, it's just going to make the game such a grind. So I see that being a very niche case for people who just want to keep playing. But besides that, but once again, if they do introduce a mode where it's like, okay, having a unit that can just keep hitting 5 enemies, if there's a game mode that shines, then Herta can definitely go up. But at the moment, I just don't see a game mode for her to shine in the game, and that's why she is sitting down there. Next up, we have Hook. Hook is going up into the B tier. Honestly, Hook is actually really solid. I can see Hook being comparable to Dan in power. Hook needs some ramp up. You got to get the burns going. You get those enhanced skills and stuff like that. Good energy regeneration. We've got also the heal, which is actually kind of clutch in certain situations, especially when you look at free-to-play players. If you don't pull like a Bailu and then you're relying on like maybe a March and a Fire Trailblazer, that heal could come in handy. But the problem that I have with Hook mainly is that we've got 2 great Fire free-to-play units in Asta and in Fire Trailblazer, which both have a massive break potential. So I'd rather diversify the damage dealers that I'm looking at building into other elements, because those are 2 units that everyone's probably going to build, and they have fire covered on the break sense. So I'd rather have different DPS that provide something different to the team, like Dan, who has the slow, and also has coverage of wind damage. So that's why Hook's down there. I think Hook is quite decent. I think we will see people do some crazy good things with Hook, but at the moment I'm just leaving Hook at B. Keep in mind, I think like you could actually even push Hook up. Moving on from that, we have March 7th. She is going into the A tier for me. Great shield, big, fat, chunky shield. Pairs really well with Dan Heng in the early game. I know Dan doesn't really want to get attacked, but you can put the shield on him. The shield is that big. It doesn't matter if he gets attacked. They're not going to pop it in the early game, and it is going to give him his Windres pen. The other thing is, maybe things like Clara, because of the extra taunt effect that it has on top of it, is going to be good. But then with her, and then we also get to the stage where it eventually gets a cleanse as well, which is huge. That is through a trace, I believe it is, that gets the cleanse, which is really nice. Which can be clutch in certain situations like Kafka fights and stuff like that in the simulated universe when you first get to it. Really, really clutch. But past that, we've got the freeze. So the freeze is crazy. The way accuracy and resistance works in this game, I've mentioned it before, is she's got a 50, I'm pretty sure hers is 50% chance to freeze. But if you get her geared up to an extra 50% hit rate, that just means she's guaranteed to freeze enemies that don't have resistance. If they have 10 resistance, you got to get to 110, so on and so forth. But some enemies are immune to freeze. So as long as you're fighting enemies that are not immune to freeze, unless you've got like a bunch of the 5 stars, pretty hard not to bring March 7th into a team that you can just endlessly freeze the enemies. It's pretty solid, not going to lie. So moving on from that, we do have Natasha. She's going into the A tier. I could put her up into the S tier just because, you're often going to want a healer, and if you don't have Bailu, like you're always going to be using her. The reason I put her down here is I do think she will get power crept very quickly as soon as we get some more healers. So she is a mandatory unit for everyone to build. But the one crazy thing about her that I really do love is that she's only got an 80 energy ult. So she's got the lowest energy requirement for any character in the game for an ult. So she can ult quite consistently, which means she doesn't need to use her skill as often, which actually means she does generate a lot of skill points, which is quite nice. So she does have that really going for her, but just an all-around good free-to-play healer. But I do see power creep definitely coming in for the healers in that aspect. Moving on from that, we jump into Pela. Pela, once again, I'm putting in the A tier. To be fair, with Pela and Asta, like you could put them both in A tier or put them both in S tier. I just think these supports are going to be very important throughout the game. And wherever you put those two, just put them together and I'm pretty happy days. Pela, her skill is just basically removes a buff from the enemy. So that can be clutch in certain situations. But if you don't have any buffs to remove, doesn't matter. You just spam her basic attack and she becomes a skill point generator that when she gets her ult, she can apply a defense break, which scales really well in the game as well. So she's just got that AoE defense break. Now, the cool thing about her passive as well is that if you do land a defense break, so if she lands any debuffs, she gains 10 energy. So if she lands that defense break on a single target, she gains 10 energy. If she lands it on 5 targets, she gains 50 energy, which allows her to cycle through really quickly. So I think that's just really, really nice. I think she's going to scale really well into the later game. I think at the real early stages of the game, I think Asta's going to be better. But then when we get to the later stages, I feel like Pela's going to sort of shine a little bit brighter, especially once you pair her with things that can slow. I mean, I feel like she's going to be really well paired with Welt, because when you're putting debuffs on the enemy to deal more damage to them, you want to slow them down so they don't wear those debuffs off quicker. So I can see her having those type of synergies as well. But in general, just another great supportive type unit. Moving on from that, we have Chick, whose name I cannot say. She is going to go into the C tier for me. Now, this could be a skill issue for me, but I just hate her RNG. She's got this RNG on her skill where she's got these 4 tiles. You use her skill, she flips a tile, you're trying to match them, and you can use like 4 skills in a row and end up at the same point you were at the start. And it's like, what was the point in draining those skills? It just feels horrible. I never enjoyed using her skill, so I pretty much just pretend that she doesn't have one because it's just too infuriating. She does get, I believe it's a Trace or an Eidolon, I can't remember which one, where the first time she uses her skill in a battle, it gets refunded. So that would be the only time I would use her skill because it's just so infuriating. But yeah, I mean, the one thing she has going for her is she is the only free-to-play quantum unit. The only other quantum unit at the moment is Zila. So, you know, you could use her as a basic spam skill point generator. Because she does have kind of like the Fire Trailblazer, she does enhance her basic skills, so it should do more do more toughness damage to the break bar. So like maybe it becomes a thing, but she just doesn't quite fit it for me. Like I said, I could be completely wrong on this one. I just hated the feeling of playing her personally with that skill. It was tedious as hell. Anyway, moving on from that, we have Sampo. Sampo's going up here in B with Hook. Sampo I really like. I personally really like Sampo. Great breaking unit, got the multi-hit attack for wind. The cool thing about Sampo is, one, his ult is going to increase dot damage. So as we get better dot damage dealers, I feel like Sampo is going to have a little bit more viability in those teams, not as a secondary DPS, but as a battery unit who's just going to generate skill points. Because with his basic skill, when you're looking at a unit that you're using as a battery to just generate skill points, they have to have other stuff to them. So because his passive is his dot, his wind shear that can stack up to 5 times, and his basic attack actually hits 3 times, you can get 3 stacks of that. That means when he's just basic attack spamming, he can actually get really solid damage because he's applying that dot, and that dot is ticking. Now, if we look at Eidolon 4, I think he could be absolutely crazy. I don't know how it works, but basically when he's got Eidolon 4, when he hits an enemy, they take damage proportionate to the wind shear that they have, a percentage of it. But I don't know if like his skill, which is a random multi-hitter, is going to proc that effect every hit or just once. That's going to be the big thing for me on whether he can be a straight damage dealer. But I think for him as a supportive battery skill point generating unit, he's going to be great because he can just spam basic attacks and then use his ult, get dots on everything, deal some decent damage. And then once again, if you've got other dot units on your team, he's increasing that damage capacity. So I think him as a skill point generator in dot teams in the future, he will be crazy. So that's Sampo at the moment. But at the moment, I just think, you know, he is a great windbreaker and stuff like that. I used him all the time in beta. Really enjoyed him. He's sitting there in B. Next up is Serval. Serval, another one I really enjoyed in the beta. She's going into the B tier. She really just works well against a lot of the mech bosses we have in the game at the moment, because a lot of them summon like the two little ads, and what you can do with Serval is just use her skill into her ult and you just clear that stuff and it's not even an issue. The other thing is the way her passive works, where if an enemy has got shock, she can just deal extra damage to them. It actually provides some decent damage to her. So I just think her kit in general is quite solid. She's not crazy, you know, she's not gonna like absolutely change the world, but for free to play, if you don't pull a bunch of crazy 5 stars, and you just like everyone has her for free, she's a fairly safe build early on. Maybe you get her to level 40 or something and then maybe pull a few better units and go, maybe I don't need her, but I found her quite useful the whole way through. Next up, we have Sushang. Sushang, probably my favorite 4-star in the game. She's an absolute breaking goddess. Like the way she can use a skill, which gets really good toughness breaking. Then if she gets into her ultimate from that skill, she can instantly ult and then gain another turn and then use another skill. And you're just like breaking bars like crazy with her doing that. Now, at Eidolon 0, she's good, but she's very expensive. She wants to use so many skill points. However, when you get her to Eidolon 1, and I think like Eidolon 1 for free-to-play players, if you can get a Sushang to Eidolon 1, maybe it's through the summon shop, you get an extra copy of her, get lucky, summon on the Jing banner and try and get, you know, the 4-star copy of her. However you want to do it, Eidolon 1 is cracked. I think she's got probably the best Eidolon 1 in the game. Bronze is pretty good. There's probably a few others, but off the top of my head, it's busted. So what happens is when she's at Eidolon 1, if an enemy is broken at the end of her using her skill, she refunds the skill point. So if an enemy is not broken, you use your skill to break them, then you'll get that refunded. If that brings you to full energy bar, then you can go into your ultimate, get another turn, use your skill again, and get a refund on that one. So essentially, like in the right situation, you can use skill, ultimate skill with her at 0 energy cost. That's at 1 Eidolon. So absolutely cracked. If you get a dupe of her, congrats, because it's absolutely sick. She has massive damage dealing potential, and she's like I said, a breaking fiend. And then when we get to her higher Eidolons, she gets more break effect. I just think she's an absolutely great free-to-play unit. Absolutely love her. It's a fun playstyle. Plus, she summons the big chicken, and it's really cool. Moving on from that, we have Tingyun. She goes into that S+ tier. She's just a crazy support. The way she works, she can really increase the damage. One, not just by increasing the attack of the ally and the damage of the ally, using her ult to give them extra ult gauge and stuff like that. So obviously you're getting more damage because you're increasing ult gauge as well. But the thing about her that's really nice is you can play her at either a neutral skill cost or a positive generation. So she can either be used as a, you know, skill then basic, so that she can get her ult off more to get, you know, your allies ulting more, or she can be used as skill basic, skill basic, because her buff is 3 turns. Depending on how you want to play it in the situation, she's just really efficient with skills essentially, and she provides a big buff to the damage dealt. Plus, she also gets her basic attacks, which then are going to deal extra damage based on the buffed ally's attack. That buffed ally is going to be dealing the extra damage as well. It's just a really good buffing unit in my opinion for free to play. So she goes right up there in S+. And I think you'll find when you get to the chaos memory, if you have Bronya, one of your teams is always going to have Bronya and the other one's always going to have Tingyun, unless you get the random situation where you put them both together with something like an Arlen or something like that. She's just amazing. And like, even if she gets power crept, you're going to need a bunch of supports throughout the game, and she's still going to be pretty good for a long period of time in my opinion. Moving on from that, Trailblazer. Let's kick it off with Trailblazer Fire. That's what we'll call this one. I'm going to put Trailblazer Fire up into the A tier. I like, maybe you could put these guys in S tier, but I just like putting Trailblazer Fire in the same tier as March 7th, just because I see them as being they're both good in their own ways. Trailblazer Fire is ridiculous because you have this basic attack where you basically only basic attack spam with this character. Sometimes you need a taunt, sometimes you need damage mitigation, so you'll use the skill, but often you really don't. You just use the basic attack, which means one, you're generating skill points. The basic attack can get enhanced, meaning you're doing the break effect, or sorry, the toughness shred that a skill on another character normally does, plus it becomes AoE, plus it gets better damage. So you got that in a basic attack spammer. Then the passive also means you get a shield every turn. It's not a big shield, but it's still a shield. And it can synergize well with March 7, stuff like that, because March 7 can proc off of someone getting attacked when they have the Fire MC shield. The other thing is the shield is whenever she uses an attack. So say you got your shield up because you used a basic attack. Two enemies attacking in a row. One attacks, breaks the shield. You can cut in front of between those two enemies and use the ultimate to put another shield up. Really cool. Like I said, the ult and the basic also both provide really good break potential as well. So just like an insanely good unit with a cracked basic attack that brings a lot of value and a really good passive that means you don't really have to use the skill and you get a lot of advantage out of this character whilst also generating skill points. Really, really good unit. Final unit, we got there. It's going to be Baseball Batman, the physical MC, and I'm going to put this one into C tier. Now, this character could definitely go up here into the B tier with these other units. Very comparable. We do get all the Eidolons for free on this one. The problem I have with this unit is that if you're bringing this unit, you're not bringing the Fire MC. And what are you doing? So, like, that is the main issue with this one. On top of that, the reason you would bring the physical MC is because you want to break physical. But free to play, like eventually you will get a Sushang who's like an absolute breaking fiend. And then the free to play healer is also physical, meaning you're always going to have like an abundance of break against physical enemies. And you got to remember, enemies also have another form of weakness. So you're going to be well covered. So I just think bringing this guy into battle, the physical MC, it's just like so niche, even though based on raw potential probably would sit here because you do have all the Eidolons. I just think through the fact that it's so, you're losing too much to actually bring this character and you got so many other things to cover that sort of type. I just think it has to belong in the C tier. But anyway, that is going to be it for my free-to-play tier list for Honkai Star Rail. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know who you think needs to move up and down. I'm always open to discussion. And once again, don't forget to be subscribed and leave a comment to go into the $100 giveaway, which we'll draw in a community post about a week away. But anyway, guys, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.